More people died from drug overdoses than motor vehicle crashes in 2014. And according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 6 out of 10 overdose deaths involved opioids, leading the CDC to call this the worst drug overdose epidemic in U.S. history. Enter Shatterproof, a national nonprofit dedicated to ending the devastation caused by addiction. Shatterproof was founded by Gary Mendell, who joins us now. Welcome, Gary. It's so nice to have you here with us.
Thank you, Tanya. Good to be here.
Can you share with us your tragic personal story that led you to start this organization? Sure.
My older son, Brian, struggled with addiction for almost 10 years. And tragically, on October 20th, 2011, I was woken up in the middle of the night by a phone call that he had died. And just doesn't get any worse. But what came from that was really reflecting on what had happened. You get sucked into all the details of day-to-day, helping your son survive. But when I was able to step back and look at it, I was just haunted, knowing how many other families had been shattered the way our family had been shattered, or were struggling with it the way we had been struggling with it. And that there was a body of knowledge that I was starting to become aware of after Brian died that I didn't know about while he was alive, that could dramatically save countless people. And it wasn't being used.
And that is what, in turn, led you to start Shatterproof, partially to get the knowledge out there. As you point out very astutely in all the materials around Shatterproof, that addiction is it's a medical affliction. It's not a sign of weak character.
Absolutely. You know, Tanya, the very last time Brian came home was 4 months before he died. He came home for a few days, spent time with the family. He was doing great. His last day home, we had a family barbecue, and that night everybody went home. After everyone went home, we're sitting on the back porch talking about our favorite topic, you know, Giants and Eli Manning. And then he turned to me and he said, "Dad, someday people will realize I'm not a bad person. I just have a bad disease and I'm trying my absolute hardest." So the last thing he ever said to me that last night before he went to bed and got up the next morning and went to the airport.
It's devastating. It's devastating. And there's nothing more devastating than that page on your website, which is dedicated to the memorials of all the young people who have lost their lives far too young to this terrible,
absolutely. And that page is there for two reasons. Number one, to show this is not just numbers. This is every person who dies is a father's daughter, you know, a mother's son. This is not just numbers. But secondly, it's there to say, we will never forget you.
Right.
And we're going to use the power of our love for you to help others.
And how are you doing that with Shatterproof? What are some of the things that you've accomplished so far that you're most proud of?
There's three things mainly. Number one, we're running events all over the country. Right? It's been historically, we've been rappelling off of buildings, but we're going to continue that this year, and we're adding a 5K series in 5 cities. So that's events where people come together, help each other, support each other, raise money for our mission. So that's number one. Number two, we've been very effective in getting laws passed around the country. In 10 states, federally, guidelines for the CDC on when doctors and how doctors should prescribe dangerous opioids. We were one of the lead advocates for that.
So overprescription of opioids is one of the causes that's been fueling this.
It's the cause. In the last 15 years, the amount of pills being prescribed on an annual basis has gone up 4 times, from 60 million prescriptions to 240 million prescriptions, which is basically a bottle of pills for every adult in the country.
And now you think the medical community is making some effort to rein that in, but not quickly enough?
Absolutely. Again, 4 times increase in pills has caused an almost 6 times increase in deaths. So if we can bring pills down to a balanced rate, not to 0, and to where the people who really need it will get their prescriptions, but not prescribed inappropriately. In answer to your question, yes, doctors are starting to absorb this and change their prescribing habits, but way too slow, way too slow. And so part of our efforts in the laws we're passing, both federally and state, is to start to legislate that. And we're not about legislating. We're about changing prescribing habits.
Right.
And if doctors won't do it voluntarily, which again, doctors are good people. This is not against doctors.
Sure.
But they have their routines and their habits. And how do we change these habits quicker
Right.
to save lives?
So Gary, there are so many people out there watching who may have a loved one
Right.
who's struggling. As your son struggled, if there was one piece of advice that you could give them that you wish you'd known or that you had a better handle on when your son was fighting his fight, what might that be?
I think it's a wonderful question. I talk to families all the time. And that piece of advice I give is I can go to sleep every night knowing that I was a great relationship with Brian. I handled things calmly. We kept getting him into treatment. But I cannot go to sleep at night knowing that I was empathetic. I was like, okay, you relapsed, let's get you back into treatment. But I didn't say, Brian, this must be hard for you. You think he wanted to disappoint his parents? You think he wanted to disappoint himself? You think he wanted to disappoint his friends and family? No. As my brain is telling me to talk right now and answer your question, his brain was telling him to take a drug like breathing air to survive. That's what your brain tells you, because it's conditioned that way for certain people who have a substance use disorder. And my advice to families was be more empathetic. You can't cross the line. You can't enable.
No.
But show empathy for someone just like you have another, like your son or daughter had another disease. If your son or daughter was laying there on the bed with cancer, everyone would be rallying. You're a fighter.
Yeah.
You're a fighter. Go get it. With this disease, you're looked at like, why can't you try harder? What's the matter with you? Show empathy. There's no one who's addicted who wants to disappoint themselves or their family.
Great piece of advice. Gary Mendell, thank you so much
Thank you for
everything
having
that
me,
you're
and
doing.
wonderful questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.